Welcome to MC Noctis, where the darkest legends are given a voice, and some voices should never be answered. Tonight's story begins with a cassette found beneath a collapsed farmhouse in the Missouri Ozarks. The label was written in pencil and smeared with something that looked like rust. It said, "Play alone." The first sheriff's deputy listened to 6 minutes of it before walking outside and shooting every dog in his kennel. The second deputy made it to the end. 3 nights later, his wife found the kitchen table set for 7 guests, although she and her husband lived alone. What follows is the recording exactly as it was recovered. My brother fed our white dog a man's name. By sunrise, that man was dead, and the bank had somehow lost every document proving we owed them money. That was when Mason decided the animal could be trained. He was wrong. We called the dog Lucky because it was the only puppy in the litter that lived. White fur, red nose, eyes that always seemed to be watching the person who was not speaking. By day, it crawled under our porch and behaved like any other dog. At night, it stood on 2 legs, borrowed my mother's straw hat, and crossed the roof with a walking stick. Tap, drag, tap. Every night it stopped above a different bedroom. Every morning, someone in that room woke with mud between their teeth. My grandmother left us a notebook explaining what the creature was. She also left one warning in red ink. Never allow it to eat 3 names. The first name bought us time. The second name turned my family against itself. And before the third name was swallowed, my mother looked directly at me and made a choice no mother should ever have to make. If you are hearing this recording, then I did not stop my brother. And the thing we raised beneath our kitchen table has learned a new way to enter a house. It no longer needs a door. It only needs someone willing to tell its story aloud. My name is Ethan Crowley, and in the summer of 1997, my family raised hunting dogs on 30 acres outside Briars Hollow, Missouri. People said Crowley hounds could follow blood across stone. What they did not say was how my father kept the bloodline strong. Puppies with crooked legs went into a burlap sack. Puppies that ate too slowly went into the sack. So did females we could not sell, and old dogs that had forgotten how to hunt. Behind the kennels was a limestone sinkhole full of black water. My father called it the well, although no rope had ever touched its mouth. Once a month, he and my older brother Mason carried the sack into the woods. It always came back empty. I was 16 the first time Mason made me go with him. Something inside the sack scratched at my wrist while we walked. I asked him to stop. He told me the bank would take the farm if we started feeding animals that could not earn their keep. Then he threw the sack. The water made one soft gulp. For a few seconds, the sack floated. Small shapes pushed against the cloth. Mason placed his boot on my back and bent me over the edge so I could watch it sink. "That's the price of keeping a family alive," he said. I told myself he was right. That was my sin, not cruelty, cowardice. Our father died the following winter when his truck slipped from an icy bridge. Afterward, Mason took over the kennels. My mother, Diane, handled the accounts. I cleaned cages, buried collars, and pretended not to notice that the sinkhole water had risen high enough to touch the roots of the trees. By spring, we were 3 payments behind. The feed supplier wanted cash. The bank wanted the land. Mason wanted something to blame. Then our oldest breeding female, Belle, disappeared for 2 days. We found her beside the sinkhole, whining into a hollow beneath an oak tree. She was pregnant, though no male dog had been near her for months. Belle gave birth during a thunderstorm. 5 puppies were black and brown like every Crowley hound before them. The 6th was male, white as candle wax. Its nose was the dark red of a healing wound. The moment it opened its eyes, every dog in the kennel began to howl. Mason picked it up and laughed. Maybe our luck finally changed. So that is what he named it. Lucky. In the corner, Belle pulled the other 5 puppies against her body. Lucky crawled away from her warmth and stared at the kitchen window where my mother was watching. Then it smiled. Not the loose-jawed panting of a dog, a slow, private smile, as if it recognized her. The other puppies began dying on the 7th night. 1 each morning. No wounds, no sickness. They simply grew cold, while Lucky grew larger. By the 5th morning, he was twice the size he should have been. Belle lay beside the empty whelping box, too weak to raise her head. When I carried water to her, she looked past me at Lucky and began to tremble. He licked her face with great tenderness. Belle died before sunset. That night, I woke to a cane striking the roof. Tap, drag, tap. Our farmhouse was 2 stories high with a steep tin roof. No animal could have climbed it. I went to the window and saw a narrow shadow crossing the moonlit ridge above me. It stood about 4 feet tall. It wore my mother's straw gardening hat, pulled low over its face. One paw gripped my father's blackthorn walking stick. The other hung at its side, too long and jointed, like a human arm covered in white fur. It stopped above Mason's room. The hat turned toward me. I dropped below the window. Above my head, the cane tapped 3 times. In the morning, Mother's hat hung beside the back door, wet with dew. White hairs clung to the inner band. My father's cane leaned beneath it, its rubber tip packed with black mud from the sinkhole. Mason called me a liar. Then he found the scratches on his ceiling. They formed a circle above his bed. Inside the circle, someone had carved 3 words through the plaster. Give me work. Mason stared at them much longer than I did. After that, the house began to sour. Milk curdled before we opened it. Cooked meat filled with pale worms while still hot. At night, small shapes gathered in the kitchen. I could hear bowls scraping and thick little voices arguing over portions. One night, I looked through the pantry keyhole. 7 guests sat around our table. One had the head of a boy and the body of a hairless dog. Another wore a woman's nightgown, but a wet muzzle pushed through its collar. The smallest creature had hooves where its hands should have been. It stood on a chair and lapped gravy from my mother's wedding china. Lucky sat at the head of the table in the straw hat. When the creatures laughed, they covered their mouths as if they knew someone was watching. Then, Lucky raised one paw. The kitchen fell silent. Without turning toward the pantry, he said in a deep, patient voice, Ethan is awake. Every head turned toward the keyhole. I bit my hand to keep from screaming. Something on the other side placed one red eye against mine. I woke at dawn on the pantry floor with a ring of muddy paw prints around my body. There was dirt packed beneath my tongue. Mother finally believed me when Lucky climbed into her hammock. She had come home early from town and heard it creaking on the porch. Lucky lay on his back like a man resting after work, the straw hat over his eyes, one hind leg hanging over the side. He was chuckling. When Mother screamed, he dropped to all fours and became a dog again. That evening, she unlocked Grandmother May's cedar trunk. At the bottom, beneath funeral clothes and yellowed tax receipts, we found a narrow notebook wrapped in oilcloth. The first page showed a white dog standing upright beneath a crescent moon. Grandmother had called it a hat hound. She wrote that such things were born in homes where animals were killed for convenience, and guilt was buried without prayer. It entered the womb of a household dog, consumed its litter, then waited for the family's fear to ripen. During the full moon, it wore a hat to hide its face from the sky. Without the hat, moonlight would reveal what lived inside the skin. Most of the pages described how to recognize it. One page described how to feed it. Write a living person's full name on paper. Place the name beneath meat that has never touched fire. If the hat hound eats both before midnight, it will visit that person in sleep. Their fear will open the mouth. Their scream will release the soul. 3 names would make it independent of every master. Mother wanted to burn the notebook. Mason snatched it from her. "The bank is taking this house on Monday," he said. "Prayer didn't stop that. Maybe this can." We thought he was talking nonsense. The next morning, our loan officer arrived to inspect the property. Harold Vane was a heavy man with polished shoes. He walked through the kennels, complained about the smell, then told my mother she had 7 days to leave the home where she had raised both her sons. Mason stood behind him, smiling. That night, I smelled raw liver downstairs. Mason was kneeling beside Lucky's bowl. Before I could reach him, the dog swallowed the meat and chewed the folded paper beneath it. I caught only 2 words written in blue ink. Harold Vane. "You don't know what it does," I whispered. Mason wiped his fingers on his jeans. "I know exactly what it does. It collects debts." At 2:13 that morning, a scream came through our disconnected telephone. It lasted 28 seconds. Then a man's voice begged something to get off the ceiling. The line went dead. At sunrise, the sheriff found Harold Vane locked inside his bedroom. Every window was latched. His mouth was full of limestone mud. On the ceiling above his bed were the prints of a walking stick. The bank postponed our foreclosure because Harold had misplaced our file before he died. Mason paid the feed supplier with money Harold had kept hidden in his car. He never explained how he knew where to find it. For the first time in months, Mother laughed at the dinner table. Then she saw Lucky beneath Mason's chair, chewing a strip of blue paper. Her laughter stopped. Mason scratched behind the dog's ears. "Good boy," he said. From under the table, in Mason's own voice, Lucky answered, "Good master." Power did not make Mason careless. It made him methodical. He copied every feeding instruction from grandmother's notebook. He measured Lucky's neck. He built a locked pen beneath the slaughter shed and told Mother the creature would never harm us as long as he controlled its meals. Mother did not agree, but she used Harold's stolen money to buy groceries. So did I. That is how evil entered our family. Not through a broken window, through small decisions we could explain to ourselves. Our Uncle Roy learned the truth 2 weeks later. He saw Lucky open the padlock with fingers that pushed out through his paws. Roy did not run. He asked Mason how much a thing like that might be worth. Mason showed him the notebook. Together, they found a passage about a black hound with 4 pale toes. Grandmother called it a boundary dog, an animal born able to see what hid inside corrupted flesh. Its bite could tear away the hathound's disguise. Its blood, painted in a circle, would force the creature to kneel. At least, that was the passage Mason read aloud. There was a stray in Briar's Hollow that matched the drawing. Black coat, 4 white toes. The children at the gas station called him Pitch. Pitch was gentle with everyone except Lucky. The first time we brought him near the farm, he planted his feet and growled until blood ran from his gums. Lucky watched from the porch, with Mother's hat shading his face. Mason and Roy dragged Pitch into the slaughter shed. I heard the chain pull tight. I heard the knife leave its sheath. Then Pitch cried like a child. They painted a collar around Lucky's pen with the black dog's blood. Lucky walked to the edge of the circle and lowered his head. "Master," he said. Roy laughed. Mason looked as if God had personally handed him the keys to heaven. Later, while I bandaged Pitch's leg, I found a strip of paper beneath the slaughter table. It had been torn from grandmother's notebook. The writing continued the sentence Mason had read. "The boundary dog's blood will force the creature to kneel, because spilled blood destroys the boundary and invites it across." Below that, grandmother had written in red, "It is not submission. It is thanks." I ran to show Mother. Mason caught me in the hallway. He read the page, folded it once, and held it over the stove flame. "Roy doesn't need to know," he said. "Neither does Mom." I tried to reach for it. Mason grabbed my wrist and pushed my hand toward the burner until I smelled my own skin. "This family is alive because I was willing to do what you weren't," he whispered. "If Lucky needs monsters, I'll give him monsters." Behind him, the cellar door eased open. Lucky stood on the steps, upright and hatless. For 1 second, I saw the face beneath the white fur. It was made of many small mouths, all panting at different speeds. Then Mason stepped between us. When I looked again, Lucky was a dog. At his feet lay a fresh sheet of paper. Someone had written Mason's full name across it. Uncle Roy had written Mason's name. I knew his handwriting. The hooked M, the narrow C in Crowley. Roy wanted the creature, and he had decided my brother was the only thing standing between him and ownership. I hid the paper inside my shirt before Mason could see it. I still believed warning him might save what remained of our family. That afternoon, I found Roy beside Lucky's pen, whispering through the bars. "You don't have to stay on this miserable farm," he told it. "I can feed you judges, cops, men with real money." Lucky lay with his chin on his paws. "Bring me the brother," it said. Roy smiled. I ran to the house and found Mason searching my room. When I refused to tell him what I had taken, he struck me. The paper fell from my shirt. Mason read his name without changing expression. Then he began to laugh. "Now you understand," he said. "There are no innocent people, only people who haven't been offered enough." He made me watch as he copied Roy's name onto a new piece of paper. He folded both names into identical squares. "Which one should I feed him, Ethan?" I said nothing. Mason placed the papers in separate pockets and walked downstairs. At midnight, a storm rolled over Briar's Hollow. The power failed. Something heavy climbed the outside wall and began crossing the roof. Tap. Drag. Tap. Roy was sleeping in the guest room. I heard his door open, followed by his bare feet running down the hall. He burst into my room and slammed the door behind him. "Your brother fed it my name," he gasped. Outside, the cane stopped. Roy pulled Mason's folded paper from his pocket. "No," he said. "I switched them. I watched it eat Mason's name." Something scratched beneath my bed. Roy stared at the floor. Lucky's voice rose from the darkness below us. "He switched them back." Roy ran. He reached the stairs before the lights returned. For a fraction of a second, the hallway was empty. Then the straw hat lifted behind him. Lucky stood taller than a man. His white legs bent backward. The blackthorn cane tapped Roy gently between the shoulders. Roy screamed before he reached the front door. Every window in the house slammed shut. The lights died again. By the time Mother found a lamp, Roy was gone. At dawn, we saw him sitting on the roof with his back against the chimney. His eyes were open. His mouth was stuffed with $100 bills from the emergency money he had tried to steal. Mason stood below and looked up at him. "Two," Lucky said from the porch. Mother turned to Mason. "What does that mean?" He did not answer. But that night, she searched his coat and found the 2 remaining corners of Grandmother's warning page. One said, "After the 3rd name." The other said, "No master." Mother woke me before sunrise. She had the notebook, a shotgun, and Pitch's chain wrapped around her hand. "Your brother isn't saving this family," she said. "He's choosing who gets to remain in it." The next full moon was 3 nights away. Mother and I spent those nights reading Grandmother's notebook until the words blurred. Near the back, we found a ritual written between recipes and birth records, as if she had been too frightened to give it a page of its own. A hat hound could not be commanded, but it could be exposed. At midnight, beneath a full moon, the straw hat had to be torn from its head. A boundary dog must bite and hold its shadow while the buried dead recognized the face above it. If the creature remained uncovered until the moon cleared the highest branch, every soul inside it would drag it back to the place where it was born. The warning appeared 3 times. Do not spill the boundary dog's blood. We had already done that. We did not know whether the ritual could still work. We knew there would not be another chance. Mother told Mason she wanted to apologize. She cooked a roast, opened our father's last bottle of whiskey, and pretended she believed Lucky had saved us. Mason drank until his words softened. At 11:40, he passed out at the table. We took the straw hat from the hook. We carried raw meat to the sinkhole and laid a trail through the woods. Pitch limped beside us, his bandaged leg leaving dark drops on the leaves. The moon was white and enormous. At midnight, Lucky came walking between the trees. He wore no disguise of ordinary movement. He stood upright from the beginning, leaning on my father's cane. The hat covered his face. Behind him came the 7 creatures from our kitchen, crawling through the brush with plates tied around their necks. "You brought the black one," Lucky said. Mother raised the shotgun. "I brought you home." She fired at the hat. The blast spun it from Lucky's head. Moonlight touched his face. The white fur opened. There was no skull beneath it. There were mouths layered inside mouths, some with human teeth, some with the tiny milk teeth of puppies. Their tongues twisted together around a dark hole that went deeper than the animal's body. From the sinkhole came the sound of sacks tearing underwater. Pitch lunged. His jaws closed around Lucky's shadow where it lay across the ground. The creature screamed with every voice it had stolen. Harold Vane, Uncle Roy, my father. Dogs I had watched Mason drown. For one terrible moment, I heard my own voice among them. Black water climbed from the sinkhole in the shapes of hounds. They crawled over the limestone edge and seized Lucky's legs. The ritual was working. Lucky drove the cane into the earth and tried to pull free. Pitch held the shadow. Mother began reciting the final lines from the notebook. The moon moved toward the highest branch. Then Mason stepped out of the trees. He had woken before we left. In his hand was our father's hunting rifle. "Get away from him," he said. Mother kept reciting. "Mason, that thing killed Roy. Roy tried to kill me. It will kill all of us. Then give me the notebook." The buried hounds had pulled Lucky to his knees. His many mouths begged Mason for help. They promised money, land, a life in which no one would ever frighten him again. I told Mason it was lying. He looked at our collapsing house through the trees. "Lies are the only thing that ever paid us," he said. Then he shot Pitch. The black dog released the shadow. Lucky rose. Every shape from the sinkhole collapsed into water. The 7 guests rushed Mother and tore the notebook from her hands. Pages spun into the moonlight like pale birds. I dropped beside Pitch. He was still breathing. His 4 white toes scraped weakly against the soil as I pressed both hands over the wound. Lucky lifted the straw hat and placed it back on his head. The buried voices stopped. Mason lowered the rifle. "I saved you," he said. Lucky brushed dirt from the hat. "Yes, Master." But beneath the brim, all those mouths were smiling. Pitch died before the moon cleared the branch. The moment his heart stopped, every dog in Briar's Hollow began barking toward our farm. Then, one by one, they fell silent. After the ritual failed, Lucky no longer crawled beneath the porch during daylight. He sat at the kitchen table. Mason gave him my father's chair. Mother locked herself in her bedroom. I buried Pitch beside the barn, far from the sinkhole, and placed his chain around the grave. At supper, Mason set 3 plates. One for him, one for me, one for Lucky. "We can still make this work," he said. "One more name, then he won't need feeding. Think about what that means. No bank, no sheriff. No one can touch us." Lucky used a fork badly, crushing it between fingers hidden inside his paws. "No master," I said. Mason's eyes moved toward me. I repeated the words from the torn page. After the third name, "No master." Lucky stopped chewing. Mason struck me hard enough to knock me from the chair. He dragged me to the cellar and locked the door. For hours I listened to them walking overhead. 2 sets of footsteps. One pair wore boots. The other used a cane. Near midnight, Mother opened the cellar door. Her face was bruised. In one hand, she held raw meat. In the other was a folded piece of paper. "We can't stop it now," she whispered, "but it may still take the name it's given." I understood before she opened the paper. Mason Crowley. She had misspelled our own last name. Her hands were shaking too badly to notice. I corrected it. That is the part I cannot forgive myself for. Not because Mason was innocent, he was not. Because for one moment, with the pencil in my hand, I wanted my brother to die. Mother placed the paper beneath the meat in Lucky's bowl. We heard Mason outside, searching the kennels. She set the bowl beneath the kitchen table. Lucky entered on 2 legs. He sniffed the meat. Then he looked at Mother. "A mother may choose one son," he said, "but she must watch me eat." His jaws closed around the meat and paper. Mother squeezed my hand. Lucky chewed once, twice. Then he spat the paper onto the table. The name written across it was not Mason's. Diane Crowley. Mason stepped from the pantry holding the original slip. "You should have chosen better," he told her. Mother did not run. She picked up the fork and drove it through Mason's hand into the table. Lucky laughed. The lights went out. Something began climbing the walls. Mother pressed both hands over her mouth. The hat hound circled her in the dark, tapping the cane against the floor. Each tap showed her something I could not see. Her eyes followed shapes moving across the ceiling. Tears ran between her fingers, but she would not scream. Mason pulled his bleeding hand free. "If it doesn't take her, it takes someone else," he said. He grabbed Mother's injured wrist and twisted. Her scream lasted less than a second. It was enough. The straw hat rose to the ceiling. Beneath it, the mouths opened. Mother's scream bent in the air as though something had hooked it, then vanished into the largest mouth. She collapsed without a mark on her body. Lucky swallowed. "3, he said. Mason tore his hand from the fork and pointed at me. "Now take him." Lucky tilted his head. "You still believe you are holding the leash?" His white skin split from throat to belly. Something thin and child-sized stepped out, wearing Lucky's hide across its shoulders like a coat. It placed Mother's straw hat on its head. The cane unfolded in its hand, lengthening joint by joint. Mason backed away. "I fed you." "Yes." "I protected you." "Yes." "I am your master." The thing touched his cheek almost lovingly. "Good boy," it said. Mason opened his mouth to answer. It did not wait for a scream. All the lamps exploded at once. In the darkness, my brother finally understood the difference between being obeyed and being used. His last sound was not a cry for help. It was an apology. I ran before I could learn who it was meant for. I hid in the storm cellar beneath the old tobacco field. That is where I'm recording this. There are no windows here. One door, one lantern. The cassette recorder belonged to my father. For the past hour, something has been walking across the ground above me. Tap. Drag. Tap. I thought I was making this tape so someone would know what happened, so the next family that found a white puppy with a red nose would kill it before giving it a name. But while I was speaking, I pulled apart the cover of grandmother's notebook. One final page had been sewn into the spine. I have read it 6 times. The words have not changed. After the third named soul, the Hat Hound no longer requires a victim's scream. It needs no permission from the living and accepts no command from a master. Yet it will always leave one witness alive. Not from mercy, from hunger. A witness will carry it beyond the land where it was born. Each telling gives the creature another mouth. Each listener gives it another house. A story spoken aloud is an open door that believes it is only a voice. Do not confess. Do not record. Do not let anyone hear how it was fed. I have been speaking for 26 minutes. The footsteps above me have stopped. For a while, I believed that meant it had gone. Then, the cassette recorder answered me. My voice came from its speaker, although the tape is still recording. It said the names in the order they were eaten. Harold Vane, Roy Crowley, Diane Crowley. Now it is repeating the name of everyone who has heard this recording. I can hear yours. The lantern just went out. Something beneath the table is wearing my mother's straw hat. It is holding one finger to its lips. It wants me to keep talking. If this tape reaches you, do not finish the story. Do not repeat any of the names. And if you hear a cane crossing your roof tonight, keep your mouth closed. Whatever voice asks to be let in, do not answer. The cellar door is still locked, but the tapping is coming from inside now. Some monsters enter a family by force. Others are invited in, one compromise at a time. Mason believed he could point evil toward the people he thought deserved it. Roy believed he could steal that power. Diane believed one child could be sacrificed to save another. And Ethan believed telling the truth could undo his silence. Every one of them was wrong. Perhaps that is what makes the Hat Hound so frightening. It never had to destroy the Crowley family by itself. It only had to offer them a reason to destroy one another. If you were in Ethan's place, would you have destroyed Lucky when the first man died? Or would one solved problem have been enough to make you feed it again? Tell me in the comments, but choose your words carefully. According to Grandmother May, every retelling gives the creature another mouth. Thank you for listening to MC Noctis. If this story kept you awake, please leave a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more first-person horror stories, dark folklore, and supernatural mysteries from across America. Share this story with someone who believes every dog is loyal. Until our next night together, lock the doors, check the roof, and if you hear something walking above your bedroom with a cane, do not look up. Good night, and remember, some animals learn their names. Others are waiting to be given yours.